Hold it, Michael.
First, she's gonna chant the first and the very last verses of the Bhagavad Gita. There's a reason for that. So let's hear from her. First of all, why don't we give a big round of applause to her? She's only 12 years old. Go ahead.
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय यत्र योगेश्वरः कृष्णो यत्र पार्थो धनुर्धरः तत्र श्रीर्विजयो भूतिर्ध्रुवानीतिर्मतिर्मम.
Okay, so she chanted two verses, the very first verse and the very last one. I don't know if you noticed, the first verse starts with dharma, dharma kshetra, right? And the very last stanza or verse ends with the word mama. So according to the ancient tradition, if you switch them around, mama, dharma. So the whole Gita is about mama, dharma. Do you know what that means? Dharma is very hard to translate in English. There's no single equivalent word in the English language, but I can explain more later on as I talk. But this whole Bhagavad Gita is about mama, dharma. Okay, that's a genius of our ancient rishis who actually wrote these verses down. So now what's going to happen is she's going to chant a whole bunch of verses, then I'll have her chant again, maybe one at a time or two at a time, then I'll explain the meaning. Before we actually do that, I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, if I use my teacher's voice, but that's not my fault because I'm a teacher. So if somebody's talking over there, I'll say, yeah, please pay attention. So don't be offended, okay? The success of this thing will depend on how much attention you pay to this thing. And I would like it to be a little bit interactive, so if you have any questions, you can ask. I'll try to answer as much as possible to the extent of my knowledge, which is not perfect, obviously. That's one thing. And then secondly, we have to know that we Hindus don't have a book called the Bible or the Quran. We don't have a book of that stature. Something that comes close is a Bhagavad Gita. Now, we know that the Hindu traditions and Hindu way of life comes from four really rich textbooks called the Vedas. Vedas basically contain all the words of wisdom coming to us from ancient rishis and ages, sort of an oral compendium, if you will. It's not a written word, but it's a spoken word. So at the end of Vedas, there's Upanishads. Upanishads are the summary of Vedas. Now, Bhagavad Gita is basically a succinct summary of those Upanishads. So if you study the Gita and if you live the principles of the Gita, then you're basically following the Vedas. Okay? So that is sort of a preamble to what we're going to discuss today. So go ahead.
Arjuna Vacha Senayorubhayormadhye Ratham Stapaya Mechuta Yavadetan Niriksheham Yodhukaman Avastitan Kairmaya Saha Yodhavyam Asmin Ranasamudyame Tasman Narha Vayam Hantum Bhartarashtan Sabhandavan Swajanam Hi Katham Hatva Sukhinasya Madhava Adharma Vibhavat Krishna Pradushanti Kulastriyaha Strishu Dushtasu Ashneya Jayate Varna Shankaraha Sanjaya Vacha Eva Muktarjuna Sankhye Rathopastha Upavishat Vishrija Sahcharam Chapam Shloka Samvigna Manasaha कार्पाणदोषपहतस्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसमूढचेताः यच्छ्रेयस्यनिश्चितब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं चादिमां मां प्रपन्नम्. श्रीभगवानुवाच अशोच्यान् अन्वशोचस्त्वं प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतांसु न गतांसुंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पण्डिताः न त्वैवाहं जातुनासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपाः न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परं देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरप्राप्तिर्धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यते अव्यक्तोऽयम् अचिन्त्योऽयम् अविकार्योऽयमुच्यते तस्मादेवं विदित्वैनं नानुशोचिन्तुमर्हसि सुखदुःखे समे कृत्वा लाभालाभौ जयाजय ततो युद्धाय युजस्व नैवं पापम् अवाप्स्यसि व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धिर् एकेह कुरु नन्दन बहुशाखाह्यनन्तश्च बुद्धयो व्यवसायिनां कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भूर्मा ते सङ्गोऽस्त्वकर्मणि योगोऽस्तः कुरु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा धनञ्जय सिद्ध्यो समो भूत्वा समत्वं योग उच्यते बुद्धियुक्तो जहातीह उभे सुकृतदुष्कृते तस्माद् योगाय युज्यस्व योगकर्मसु कौशलम् यततो ह्यभिकौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इन्द्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रसभं मनः तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः वशे हि यस्येन्द्राणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः सङ्गस्तेषु पजायते सङ्गात् सञ्जायते कामः कामात् क्रोधो भिजायते क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् विनश्यते शुचौ देशे प्रतिष्ठाप्य स्थिरमासनमात्मनः नात्युच्छ्रितं नातिनीचं चैलाजिनकुशोत्तरं तत्रैकाग्रं मनः कृत्वा यतचित्तेन्द्रियक्रियः उपविश्यासने युञ्जात् योगमात्मविशुद्धये समं कायशिरोग्रीवं धारयन् अचलं स्थिरः सम्प्रेक्ष्य नासिकाग्रं स्वं दिशश्चानवलोकयन् युञ्जन् एवं सदात्मानं योगी नियतमानसः शान्तिं निर्वाणपरमां मत्संस्थाम् अधिगच्छति नात्यश्नतस्तु योगोऽस्ति न चैकान्तम् अनश्नतः न चाति स्वप्नशीलस्य जाग्रतो नैव चार्जुन युक्ताहारविहारस्य युक्तचेष्टासु कर्मसु युक्तस्वप्नावबोधस्य योगो भवति दुःखः चञ्चलं हि मनः कृष्ण रमाति बलवद्दृढं तस्याहं निग्रहं मन्ये वायोरिव सुदुष्करम् श्रीभगवानुवाच असंशयं महाबाहो मनो दुर्निग्रहं चलम् अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येन च गृह्यते समशत्रौ च मित्रे च तथमनयोः शीतोष्णः सुखदुःखेषु समसङ्गविवर्जितः त्रिविधं नरकस्येदं द्वारं नाशनमात्मनः कामक्रोधस्तथा लोभस्तस्मात् एतत् त्रयं त्यजेत्.
Very good. You heard it. So you understand the rhythm of it and the magic of the sound of the words. Now, the very first verse says, Dhritarashtra, the blind king, is asking what's happening in the battlefield, Kurukshetra. Now, there's a subjective meaning and an objective meaning. Objective meaning is easier. It's a like literal translation of the word, but that doesn't give you the wisdom that you're looking for from the book. But the subjective meaning is what's really important, what's meaningful to you. How can I apply these principles that are outlined in the Gita to today's life, 21st century? Whether you're a student or government officer or a teacher or a political leader, how do I apply these principles? That's the core of the teaching of the Gita. It's really see, if you really pay attention, Hindus never call themselves Hindus. Hindus never call themselves Hindus. We are Sanatana Dharmis. So all the laws that are outlined in our books are eternal laws, Sanatana Dharma. Okay. Now I mentioned before that I'll explain what dharma, the word dharma means. It's loosely translated into duty, but that's not all. It can mean many different things depending on the context. It can mean the law, the nature. So, for example, gravity is the dharma of massive objects. All right, or giving light and heat is the dharma of fire. Dharma can also mean that which holds together. The dharma of a father is to provide for his children. The dharma of a mother is the same thing, to protect the family. So the word dharma means many different things depending on the context. So that's why there's no one single equivalent word in English. So the whole thing, the Bhagavad Gita is about 700 verses uttered by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Arjuna is a soldier in the battlefield. It's really, if you look at it, there's a context, yes, there's a physical battle. Some people argue about whether Krishna lived or whether the Kurukshetra battle happened and things like that. For us, actually, in the 21st century, none of that actually matters. What matters is what can we learn and apply, and how can we better our lives using the wisdom outlined in the Gita. For when you look at it from that point of view, it's really, the Gita is a manual for correct living, for peaceful, happy living. So the symbolic meaning is this: the blind mind, Dhritarashtra, Dhritarashtra is a blind king, so he symbolizes the blind mind, is asking, hey, what's going on in the Kurukshetra? Kurukshetra is the battle within. There's a good side and the bad side, and the bad sides are many. There are 100 Kauravas as opposed to 5 Pandavas. So the virtues versus vices, if you will. So that's what the first verse is. If I tell you the verse number, can you recite them, or did you number them? Okay. So can we do 121 and 122? Yeah.
Arjuna uvacha senayorubayorमध्ये रथं स्थापयाम्यच्युत यावदेतान् निरीक्षेऽहं योद्धुकामान् अवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यम् अस्मिन् धनसमुद्यमे.
Okay. Chapter 1 is aptly called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Who is Arjuna? As I said before, Arjuna is a soldier in the battlefield. Arjuna can be any one of us. We're all soldiers in one way or the other. We're trying to tackle the problems that life throws at us. Have you heard the expression paralysis by analysis? When you think too much about things, you cannot perform at the level at which you're capable of performing. So you're debilitating yourself. You become inactive. And this is exactly what happened to Arjuna. On the battlefield, he let his emotional mind to take over. And he started kind of questioning the whole purpose of the war. that's too late. A soldier is not supposed to do that. Even today, if a soldier does that, I mean, I'm not talking about conscientious objector, that's a different matter. But if a soldier in the battlefield disobeys the orders or refuses to fight, he will be court-martialed and punished even today. So, so when you look at it, that's what's really happening. Some people who don't understand the significance of the Bhagavad Gita falsely claim that Krishna is advocating mass murder. That's not correct at all. That's absolutely wrong. It is a context. You need to understand the context. So Arjuna becomes debilitated. He cannot perform at all. He's a very very capable warrior, soldier. He actually asked Krishna to carry him around, and so that he can see all the people that he must fight. That's what the first two verses are. And then Arjuna offers a list of reasons why he should not fight. That's verse number 137. Can you recite that? 137.
Tasmanarha vayam hantum dhartarashtraन् sabandhavan swajanam hi gatham hatva sukhinas madhava.
Basically, he shirks his duty as a kshatriya or the warrior. And 141, please.
अधर्मभिभवात् कृष्ण प्रदुष्यन्ति कुलस्त्रियः स्त्रीषु दुष्टासु वार्ष्णेय जायते वर्णसङ्करः.
There's an expression he uses, varna sankara. So in modern times, people interpret that as saying, oh, the Gita doesn't advocate mingling of caste. But the word varna doesn't mean the caste as it means today. It's, again, a total false propaganda by people who don't really understand the Gita. Arjuna puts forward a litany of reasons why he should not be fighting. And he's saying that if the men all are fighting, the women will be left without husbands. And then some sort of corruption will happen, and the society will fall into decadence. And he doesn't stop. He gets on and on and on. The most interesting thing is Lord Krishna doesn't say anything at all until Arjuna exhausts all his excuses, and then he talks. All right, so let's go to chapter 2, 2.7.
कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसमूढचेताः यच्छ्रेयस्य निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं चाडिमां त्वां प्रपन्नम्.
He says, my heart is overpowered by the taint of pity. My mind is confused as to duty. That is, what's the right thing to do? I ask thee, you, to tell me decisively what's good for me. I am thy disciple. Instruct me who has taken refuge in thee. See, until that moment, now the student is ready. So look at the way how Krishna responded before, or did not respond. That's more important, right? So now Krishna knows Arjuna wants to learn. He accepts Krishna as his guru or teacher or mentor. 2.11.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Ashochan Anvashocastvam Prajnavadanscha Bhashase Gatansunagatansunscha Nanushocanti Panditaha.
Okay, just one word about this chapter. This chapter 2, is called the Yoga of Knowledge. Okay, so Sri Krishna is teaching Arjuna and us what yoga actually is. In fact, I would say this if you learn chapter 2 is really the summary of the entire Gita. So instead of reading the whole Gita, you can just read chapter 2 and understand exactly the essence of the teachings of the Gita. As I said before, Sri Krishna didn't say anything, and then finally he speaks with a smile. He said, he's destroying Arjuna's arguments with a sledgehammer. Listen to this. He's giving Arjuna the essence of the three orders of reality. absolute reality, relative reality, and then illusory reality, illusion. He said, "You have grieved for those who should not be grieved for, yet he speaks words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead." By the way, the revered Shankaracharya, in his elaborate commentary on the Gita, starts with this verse. He doesn't say anything before this. So this is where actually the Gita starts, the yoga of knowledge. So remember, we are in chapter 2 now. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole 18 chapters, but we have picked and chosen a few. That'll give you the gist of what the Gita is all about. One other thing that I want to say is this. When I was growing up, I don't know how, maybe things are different now in India. Young people did not even bother to read or learn from the Gita. It's only the old people's job. That should not be the case. Young people should be taught, because this is what really makes us strong as individuals. Okay, so that's one of the reasons that I wanted to offer this to our kids, maybe teenagers and up. Maybe young kids are too young for this, but teenagers can definitely make use of the wisdom laid out in these verses. One other thing that I want to say is this: you can go through the Gita multiple times, nothing will happen to you. But if Gita goes through you once, that'll make the whole difference. So don't brag about, oh, I can recite the whole Gita by heart. No good, okay? But it's how you assimilate the teachings of Gita into your life that matters. Okay, 2:12 and 2:13.
नत्वैवाहं जातुनासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपाहं न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परं देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरप्राप्तिर्धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति.
He's saying, it's not that at any time in the past, indeed, was I not, what was I? Nor were you, nor these rulers of men. We all existed before, we will continue to exist forever. What he's pointing at is this physical body of ours is impermanent. It'll perish one day. But what's inside you, if you want to call it the soul, that's fine. But the term that they use is the self with capital S. Okay? So that is not going to perish. Just as in the body, the embodied self passes into childhood, into youth and old age, so too does it passes into another body. A firm person does not grieve at all. Now the moral of these verses is this: not that you should not empathize with other people. The important point here is that one should do what is necessary and what's right without grieving or worrying or kind of brooding over consequences. Arjuna's job at that point is to defend his country and save it from destruction. I don't know if you know the story of the Mahabharata, but at the time the war was declared, things were at a point where there was no going back. Everything was in turmoil. There was no piety, there was no dharma, there was all kinds of corruption and vice propagated by the Kauravas. So that had to be stopped. So in the battlefield is not the time or place to think about like compassion. That is a wrong way of being compassionate about the war or the consequences of the war. Okay, that's the moral of the story. 2.25.
अव्यक्तोऽयम् अचिन्त्योऽयम् अविकार्योऽयमुच्यते तस्मादेवं विदित्वैनं नानुशोचिन्तुमर्हसि.
The self is said to be unmanifested, inconceivable, and unchangeable. If you know this truth, you will not grieve for anything. Now, Sri Krishna is trying to teach Arjuna and us the three orders of reality, as I said before: the absolute reality, the relative reality, and the illusory reality. The Sanskrit terms for these realities are Paramarthika Satyam, Vyavaharika Satyam, and Pratibhasika Satyam. Another way of saying that is the absolute truth is the eternal truth that never changes, that never changes in its entirety, right? But Vyavaharika Satyam is the truth that we get through our senses. It's a sensory perception. So I'm standing here in front of you. It's all real. I mean, nobody can say it's not real, but it's what my perception tells me exists. Okay, that can change. For instance, one point you get angry. Yes, that is real at that point. But later on, or even before that, that anger didn't exist. So what is not permanent is not real. Then the pradibhasika satyam, that's total illusion. You mistake a rope for a snake. Yes, that snake was real in that person's mind. Or when you're dreaming, you think about something, you actually feel the pain and the sorrow and the anger and the jealousy and all those feelings, right? But you know that's not true. That's not real. How do I know? When you wake up. So maybe we are in a dream world right now. When we actually wake up, we'll understand what the truth is. That's the essence of the message. 2.41, 41.
व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धिर् एकेह कुरु नन्दन बहुशाखाख्यनन्तश्च बुद्धयो व्यवसायिनाम्.
O joy of Purus, there's but a focused, pointed determination for the resolute. Many branched and endless are the thoughts of the irresolute. What he's saying is, if you want to get anything done, be focused. That goes to students and men and women and anybody who works in any sort of fields. Focus is the key. Swami Vivekananda once said the difference between good and great is the degree to which one is focused in his or her work. So don't forget. So that's what Krishna is saying. 247.
कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भुः मा ते सङ्गोऽस्त्वकर्मणि.
One of the most often quoted verses of the Gita is 247. It's saying, maybe you don't have to read the whole Gita at all. Just this verse is enough. So you can read a happy, peaceful life. It's saying your right, your duty, or your job is to do the work that is necessary, but you're not entitled to a specific, particular results thereof. So, just a word on the word results. I said the word results, but I don't actually prefer that word. When I translate it from the Sanskrit, I use the word results, but more than results, what he means is personal gain, selfish gain. Okay, so if you think about that, you will be unskilled in the job that you're doing. Think about a baseball player. If he or she looks at the scoreboard all the time, how well will he play? Or basketball, same thing, right? Not that you should not worry at all about the result. Yes, you should think about the results. If you don't get the result, don't repeat the same thing. But don't react violently. Don't let your emotional mind take over. That's the essence of this message. 247. If you don't know anything at all about the Gita, at least you should know this verse. 247. Right? Okay. 248.
योगोस्तत्कुरु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा धनञ्जय सिद्धिस्सिद्ध्यो समो भूत्वा समत्वं योग उच्यते.
He defines what yoga is. Yoga is not hatha yoga. Hatha yoga is what you see. 50-minute yoga, or so a lot of people say, oh, what are you doing Friday night? I'm doing yoga Friday night. That's not what yoga actually is. Yoga, according to Sri Krishna, Lord Krishna, is evenness of mind. What is evenness of mind? Let me just translate the whole verse first. Perform duty, O Dhananjaya. Dhananjaya is another word for, another name for Arjuna. Being steadfast in yoga, abandoning attachment, balance in success and failure. Yoga is evenness of mind. Evenness means equanimity. Equanimity is not indifference. Um, it's um, it's not reacting badly, violently to results. So let's say, let me just use a funny language, for example, or descriptive language. It's okay to expect milk in the fridge, but if you don't find the milk, don't kick the refrigerator. Okay? I hope I drove home the point. Um, but please do not confuse equanimity with indifference. Indifference is bad. Equanimity is not. Equanimity means, well, there's no such thing as failure. You jump from failure to failure to failure. Success is what? A series of failures. By the way, all these words of wisdom are not unique to the Gita either. If you look at C.P. Snow or Winston Churchill or people like that, very eminent Western scholars have spoken the same words. That's why I said in the beginning, these are not specific to what is called quote unquote Hinduism. It's Sanatana Dharma. They are universal principles that you can apply. Anyone, regardless of caste or creed or nationality or ethnicity or race, you can apply to your life. So, yeah, literal translation can be confusing here. So be mindful of that. Let me hear 250, and then I'll say a little bit more about this. Go ahead, 250.
बुद्धियुक्तो जहातीह उभे सुकृत दुष्कृते तस्माद् योगाय युज्यस्व योगकर्मसु कौशलम्.
See, that's another definition of yoga. Yoga, according to Lord Krishna, is skill in action. First he said evenness of mind, then he said is skill in action. If you don't have evenness of mind, you will not be skilled in whatever you do. Let's say I want to sing, I want to learn a new song. If I constantly worry about what other people think about my singing, I'm not going to do a good job. I'm not going to be focused in what I'm doing, or dance or anything. So skill in action, dexterity in action, and evenness of mind go hand in hand. You need evenness of mind to be able to do your job well. That's what Lord Krishna is saying. If you look at this, he never mentions the word God or anything that we conventionally associate spirituality with. Spirituality, to me personally, I don't know what you think, but it's really about using your rational mind in living a peaceful life, happy life, or life to the fullest extent possible. What the verse essentially means is that one must act rationally and not decide whether an action is good or evil based on one's own emotion only. Emotions are required, are needed, but you cannot base your decisions and actions solely based on that, okay? And you need to acquire the skill necessary to perform one's job. The skill in action is what we call yoga. That's what Lord Krishna says in this stanza. Give your 100% to your work, do it sincerely without worrying about personal gains, rewards, or even results. So the word results does not convey the whole meaning. You have to understand that you're talking about personal gain, selfish interest. Do not work for selfish interests. Okay? All right, let's hear 3 verses together, 260, 261, and 262.
यततो ह्यपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इन्द्रियाणि प्रमादीनि हरन्ति प्रशभं मनः तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्तासीत मत्परः पश्येहि यस्येन्द्राणि तस्य प्रज्ञप्रतिष्ठितः ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः सङ्गस्तेषुपजायते सङ्गात् संजायते कामात् क्रोधोऽभिजायते.
The turbulent senses meaning your sight, smell, and touch, and all that. O son of Kunti, Arjuna, do violently carry away the mind of a wise person, even as he or she strives to control them. Now, what are these destructive emotions? Anger, jealousy, envy, hatred, fear, and so on. The verse doesn't list them, but that's my own. Um, if you harbor these emotions, it's plainly obvious that you cannot do the work with dexterity. Now, having restrained them all, notice that Lord Krishna didn't say suppress them. If you try to suppress your emotions, you will not be able to succeed. Okay, it's going to backfire on you. What you need to do is you need to channel your energy, mental energy, onto something bigger than yourself. A wise person should sit steadfast, intent on me. He said, intent on me, not Krishna himself. Me meaning the, the self that's inside you, the absolute truth inside you. His wisdom is steady, whose senses are under control. But Lord Krishna acknowledges it's not an easy job. Even the wise people, when they try to control their mind, it wanders, the mind wanders. When someone thinks of objects of desire, attachment from them arises. From attachment, craving is born, and from craving rises anger. See, this is what I call a ladder of failure. If you crave something, again, a lot of people translate karma, the word karma, into English, and then they say desire. I don't like that word desire. Desire is fine. Lord Krishna obviously desired Arjuna to learn these things, otherwise he wouldn't have taught this. It's craving that I think that should be the right word. See, when you crave for something, you really attach to it, and if you don't get it, it arises. The anger arises, and from anger, disillusionment, and disillusionment, irrationality. Right? So, lack of discrimination. Once lack of discrimination sets in, your future is done with. You cannot function in society. So that is chapter 2. So I didn't, even scratch the surface. I only gave you a few verses. But let's move on to chapter 6, the yoga of meditation. Now, how do I achieve the equanimity of mind? There are several paths. One is through meditation, dhyana. One is through knowledge, jnana yoga. The other one is karma yoga. A fourth one is bhakti yoga. In fact, Lord Krishna recommends karma yoga. I'll summarize at the end one particular verse. Okay, so let's hear from chapter 6, the yoga of meditation, 6:11.
शुचौ देशे प्रतिष्ठाप्य स्थिरमासनमात्मनः नात्युच्छितं नातिनीचं चैलाजिनकुशोत्तरम्.
Sit in a clean spot, neither too high nor too low, in a seat made of cloth, a skin, or kusha grass, one over the other. This is the only place in the Gita where Lord Krishna talks about how to sit for meditation. No other place. I can find it. If you find it, let me know. 6:12.
तत्रैकाग्रं मनः कृत्वा यतचित्तेन्द्रियक्रियः उपविश्यासने युञ्जात् योगमात्मविशुद्धये.
6:12. Having focused your mind with the actions of the mind and the senses control, practice yoga for the purification of the self. Practice yoga, what does that mean? It means that you contemplate, contemplate your union with the ultimate, your own inseparability from the absolute. This is what actually yoga means. Yoga is a union between you and the ultimate truth, or the eternal truth, or the unchangeable absolute reality. I also want to say at this point that many modern scientists and psychologists have systematically studied the benefits of meditation, especially this neuroscientist in Wisconsin. I mean, I can give you more details about these things, but let me just say that their studies have unequivocally substantiated what our ancient rishis have established thousands of years ago. 6:13.
समं कायशिरो ग्रीवं धारयन् अचलं स्थिरः सम्प्रेक्ष्य नासिकाग्रं स्वं दिशश्चानवलोकयन्.
Hold your body firmly, head and neck straight and still, gazing at the tip of your nose without looking around. In other words, concentrate on your breathing. Um, this is about focusing your mind, avoiding unnecessary, energy consuming, debilitating thoughts. Now, finally, Arjuna says, 634.
चञ्चलं हि मनः कृष्ण प्रमाति बलवदृढं तस्याहं निग्रहं मन्ये वायोरिव सुदुष्करम्.
Oh Krishna, the mind is turbulent, strong, and unyielding. I find it extremely difficult to control the mind. This is a common experience for all of us, unless we are, Saint Shankaracharya or Vivekananda. Initially, when you try to practice meditation, the mind will wander. It is very natural. So the only thing you need to do is bring it gently back to what the focus is. If it is your breath or if it's something else, bring it back to the object of focus. If you are interested in this kind of thing, I would highly recommend a book written by an engineer in Google. It's called Search Inside Yourself. He actually breaks it down to simpler terms and in practical terms. If you want to practice and if you learn more about this kind of technique, let's go to 635.
श्री भगवानुवाच असंशयं महाबाहो मनो दुर्निग्रहं चलम् अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येन च गृह्यते.
Abhyas means practice. Okay, so he's saying, of course, it is hard to control the mind, but through constant practice and dispassion, in other words, detachment, you can restrain your mind. He never claimed that it was easy or anybody can do it. With constant practice, you can do it. And it's like anything else. How do you learn dance well? How do you dance soccer well, right? How do you get good at piano? Practice. Practice makes it perfect, right? Okay, let's go to chapter 12 briefly. Again, there's a beautiful chapter, Bhakti Yoga, right? Let's just take two verses from chapter 12, 12:18.
समशत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समसङ्गविवर्जितः.
Okay, another path to equanimity of the mind is through Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti means devotion. Devotion to what? You can say that to the Lord, that's fine. But if you don't like that kind of language, you can just say devotion to whatever you're doing, 100%. You put 100% into it without thinking negative thoughts. He who is the same to foe and friend, and also in honor and dishonor, who is the same in cold and heat, and pleasure and in pain, who is free from attachment, he is the one who has realized the absolute, who is ready to realize the absolute truth. He's not saying that once you do that, you realize the ultimate truth, but that's the condition. Your mind has to be in for that, so that you can go to the next step. What does Yoga Sutra begins with? The first verse of Yoga Sutra. Anybody know? Chitta vritti nirodha yoga. So yoga is nothing but the control of the mind and your thinking. Without that, you cannot reach the ultimate goal. So let's see. What's not on the list is 12:19. So let me just say that 12:19 saying, to whom censure or rather insult and praise are equal, who is silent, content with anything, steady-minded, full of devotion, that person is dear to me. Me meaning what? Again, whenever Bhagavad Gita says me, think of the ultimate reality, the unchanging reality. You can call it Lord, God, or anything. But the Gita is not saying these words at all. He says me, what's inside you. Tattvamasi or Aham Brahmasmi is the main idea behind the Gita. Actually, it's the Advaita philosophy. Hinduism is not monolithic, by the way. So there are many branches of philosophy. Some people believe in Advaita philosophy. Some people believe in Dvaita. Some people believe in Visishta Advaita. There are so many branches of Hindu philosophy. It's not monolithic by any stretch of the imagination. And 1212 is also not on the list, so I'm just going to say it is. Okay. So I'm just going to summarize that in English. I'll say this. So this may be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. Lord Krishna said, this is from Lord Krishna, knowledge is superior to practice. What is practice? Rituals and so on, right? Meditation is superior to knowledge. Renunciation is superior to meditation. So this is why I said earlier, Lord Krishna recommends karma yoga. Karma yoga meaning doing your work completely detached or from personal gains, okay, or selfish thoughts of gains and I don't know, fame or whatever, money and that kind of thing. If you do that, you cannot do your job well. If you don't do your job well, you will not succeed in life. Plain and simple. So there's a commonsensical way of looking at the Gita. Don't mystify it, demystify it. That's my personal goal. To conclude then, let's recite one verse from chapter 16. Chapter 16 is termed the divine and the devilish. He talks about the different kinds of people. So 16:21, and with that we'll close.
त्रिविधं नरकस्येदं द्वारं नाशनमात्मनः कामक्रोधस्तथा लोभस्तस्मात् एतत्त्रयं त्यजेत्.
Lust or craving, anger and greed, these are the gateways to hell. So abandon them. So I hope I made some sense. We both made some sense to you guys. If you have any questions, you can always ask me. I'll tell you what I know. So let's all have peaceful, happy lives. Okay?